Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Yesterday we focused closely about what happened in Pokrovsk and what caused it and what can be done. Today we're going to touch upon it briefly, specifically what is being done to improve the situation, and then we're going to talk about the issues that Putin is having in his own court, where there are people that are openly disagreeing with him. We also know that Ukraine is going to receive additional support from the European allies, and Russia is not going to evade new sanctions, and even the older sanctions are actually hurting it a lot. So let's look at everything and more, and we're starting now with the Ukraine Daily News. For Pokrovsk, you can watch yesterday's video to catch up on all of the details and reasons what is happening. But we are also now receiving reports from various people on the ground or just people in the know on what is happening there and how Azov and other brigades and units that are arriving helping to stabilize the situation. And here I put an example for one of these messages. And in general, this soldier that is going under the nickname officer, he is reporting that the situation is becoming more controlled. Ukrainians have been focusing specifically on trying to cut off Russian logistics, trying to cut off Russian reinforcements. So it's reasonable to expect that there is a lot of drone units that arrive to the area. And it seems that generally there is a prospect for potentially improvement of the situation in the closest days. So, as I said yesterday, the catastrophic situation has been fixed. Now we're trying to manage the consequences of this breakthrough. But it is important to remember that the war is two-way street. So Russians are also doing certain actions to try to maintain this breakthrough and hopefully expand it. We now get reports that additional reserves are being taken off from the Sumy and generally the northern direction and are being relocated to Pokrovsk and areas around Pokrovsk to try to reinforce their movements in that sector. And most likely because the situation around this breakthrough, or not a breakthrough, whatever you want to call it, the situation there is volatile. So obviously Russians will start putting a lot of effort to try to expand this and turn it potentially into full-blown breakthrough of the front lines. We're going to see what's going to happen. So far, Ukrainians are reporting that in general, there are more units arriving in the north and in the south and east, and they're arriving mostly from the northern areas of the front line, like Sumy, where it seems Russians are taking the priority off of trying to capture Ukrainian land from the north. But the main story tonight is pretty telling, and that story actually has a name. It is called Dmitry Kozak. Dmitry Kozak, in 2007, he was a pretty trusted aide of Vladimir Putin. He hosted the Olympic Games in Russia, which was a major PR exercise that Putin did right before invading Georgia. So this was his big triumph, big show to the world that Russia is great again. Then Mr. Putin annexed Crimea in 2014, and at that time Mr. Kozak was still a very trusted ally of Putin. He oversaw the integration of newly occupied territory into Russia. In 2021, the noon of the war, Kozak was meeting with American diplomats about the accumulation of Russian forces on the borders of Ukraine, and he was pretty openly laughing in their faces, as described by Mr. Sullivan. In December 2021, Karen Donfrey, an assistant secretary of state, met with Mr. Kozak, a last-ditch effort to avert a war. Mr. Kozak was, quote, blowing smoke from his gold-filtered cigarettes into the face of the assistant secretary and launching into long soliloquies about the evil of perfidious regime in Kiev. Since the start of the full-scale invasion and seeing the results that were not very encouraging, Mr. Kozak decided, and is probably the only person in the Putin circle that has openly, though not publicly, stated his position that he is against the war, and he was trying to ask around what are the reasons that this war needs to go on, that it would be better to stop it and try to restart some kind of relationships with the West and do something again later. He was really trying to do it, and by this year, he was pretty much the only person in Putin's close circle that was doing it. Even earlier this year, he was trying to present a case to Putin about the fact that this war needs to be stopped, that there is imminent problems coming for Russia. Unfortunately for Mr. Kozak here, he has been moved aside, and now Mr. Kiriyenko has taken over a lot of his competencies. And this is very illustrative, mostly because it describes us that Putin indeed doesn't want peace. This is relevant for all of the people that are talking about what's going to happen Friday, because seeing this, we already can estimate exactly what is going to happen. And more importantly, this underscores once again just how deluded Putin is from the true understanding of reality, that he thinks that he's mega winning, that he thinks and is fully encircled himself with yes men that are just continuously bowing to his genius and stating that, yes, we are totally winning in Ukraine and we will soon be absolutely dominating, which they absolutely will not. Because despite the fact that there is like something happening in Pokrovsk and it might be serious, in general, Russia is not really having a good time at all. But more importantly is that Kozak is not the only one. While he is the only one that media has been reporting on lately, and his downfall has been now documented here in this article, it is crucial to underscore that right now, pretty much anyone in Russia's economic circles are underscoring that war is the biggest problem of Russia. Never in Putin's reign, ever, and arguably even before Putin's reign, though this is debatable, Russia was in worse economic situation than it is now. The amount of issues that can just blow up into the Russian faces because of this war is stupendous. And everyone, including the head of the central bank or any other person in the economic side of the Russian close government and ruling circles, they're stating one thing and one thing only: war is destroying us. We need to stop. So Mr. Kozak and the other economic circles that were not able to and are not able to fully convince President Putin underscore just one thing: that this dictator is completely obsessed and there is nothing reasonable that's going to convince him otherwise. And the story of Mr. Kozak will potentially be the story of Russia itself. Bloomberg reports that Russia's Saratov oil refinery halted operations after the Ukrainian strikes. The Rosneft facility, with a processing capacity of 140,000 barrels of crude oil per day, has stopped production altogether, which will have an impact on the domestic gasoline supplies in Russia. Saratov oil refinery is already a third plant that stopped or cut their refining capabilities after Ukrainian kinetic sanctions. This is the best sanctions that actually work and deliver results. Go Ukraine. Finland has filed criminal charges against the top officer of the Baltic oil tanker that was charged with severe damage to the undersea cables in December of 2024. The prosecutors accuse the officers of aggravated criminal mischief for allegedly dragging the ship's anchor more than 90 kilometers across the Gulf of Finland on December 25th, severing the electricity and telecommunications cables and causing nearly 7 million euros in damages. In pursuing the case, Finland authorities aim to hold shadow fleet operations without formally attributing the damages to Moscow. And I will not express my opinion on the matter, because then this news overview video will turn into me yelling for 20 minutes about someone not having balls. Let's move on. Ukraine and everyone else should acknowledge the effort that volunteers and territorial defense forces that are pretty poorly equipped compared to some other parts of the defenders of Ukraine, and their efforts into destroying the Shahid drones and other terror weapons of Ukraine. Over the past month, more than 200 enemy UAVs were shut down in the Sumy region. Nearly half of them were destroyed thanks to coordinated work of territorial defense forces and volunteer formations. This is the result of our defenders' daily efforts, and I want to extend thank you to them from me and all of this community. I would ask everyone to also express your gratitude if any of these defenders will happen to watch this video. Check them in the comment section. As always, critique in Ukrainian military is leading to positive change, and here we see a result of this positive change. We had another Russian strike on one of the training fields in Ukraine. If beforehand a strike like that would cause massive deaths of personnel, and it would be a tragedy that would be mentioned in the news in a lot of places in Ukraine, and it would be a national day for reflection of why things are so bad and why people don't have proper processes on how to react to danger, then we see that improvements are happening. And in this case, there was noted a drone that was surveying the area. The alarms were announced. However, right after the announced alarms happened and people started evacuating the fields, the cluster munition warhead missile came into positions shortly, and one of the people got killed and 11 wounded with various severity. In any case, 1 dead and 11 wounded is not good, but it is definite improvement from what was happening before. And considering there was a precise missile strike on the area with little to no waiting time, so to say, this was good indeed. And I'm glad to see that the new security processes are present and are working. The latest reports suggest that Russia is actively recruiting people on the newly occupied territories. In this article, it talks about people in Mariupol, but there was also recently another captured soldier that was a citizen of Ukraine, and he was actually participating during 2014 and onwards the counter-terrorist operation in the east of Ukraine. Yet after Russians came in and occupied the territories, they posted very severe requirements for all of the people in the territories. If people would like to continue living in these territories and receive, for example, medical support or ability to do pretty much anything, they were forced to have Russian passports. So now Russia is forced mobilizing these people and using them to fight against Ukrainian defenders and destroy their cities, kill their children, and everything else. There is no end to the Russian cruelty. Canada will be joining the European Union in the cap for the Russian oil prices. Earlier this year, the European Union accepted the 18 sanctions package, in which it was outlined that there is going to be a tighter oil price cap on the Russian oil. This is done due to the earlier oil price cap of $60 was not as significant anymore, and it was not as pressured for the Russians, as the oil prices went down in general, mostly due to the abundance of oil on the market and as well as slowdown in the global economy. We saw now with the new mechanism that every half a year the oil prices and situation of Russians will be reviewed. The new oil price cap that will be coming in September will be $47.6 per barrel, and Russians will have significant issues transporting those oil tankers through the European waters. And we've seen that generally oil price cap has been a very successful measure on restricting the revenues Russia is able to get from the trading of their oil. A notable report in the support for Ukraine has happened recently. In the latest reported data by the Kiel Institute, it is the Europeans that are finally now leading the spending on weapons for Ukraine. It is a well-known fact that in all spending to support Ukraine, Europeans have been way ahead than the Americans. But there was one category in which Europeans were slightly behind the Americans, which was direct weapons spending. it is now have been overtaken by the Europeans. So now in absolutely all aspects, civilian, humanitarian, weapons, everything, it is now Europeans that are contributing everything and more to support the Ukrainian forces. And I'm hoping we will do even more. This is the best money spent I can imagine. Let's go, Europe. And Germany agrees with my calls, and they have actually, in the recent meetings between Merz and Zelensky, agreed that Germany will participate in the new weapons purchase programs from the United States, PURL, to supply another 500 million from US weapons to Ukraine. This is a great program that allows to deliver weapons to Ukraine much, much faster than a lot of other programs, and therefore Ukrainians can expect significant boost to their weapons supplies right now in the moment. Previously, the Netherlands also approved 500 million PURL program purchase for Ukrainian weapons, and also the Scandinavian countries of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden together putting another 500 million. In total, the PURL program will already rapidly supply Ukraine with 1.5 billion weapons from the United States. And finally, interesting news as Ukrainian anti-corruption agency has been active in Bulgaria. Bulgarian weapons manufacturers have been potentially caught. They're not fully proven yet, but they have been caught potentially overpricing weapons for Ukraine, and while committing to the government requested contracts on supplying weapons to Ukraine, they've been hiking prices significantly. And also there is rumors that they have been underhandedly selling weapons to Russians. It's great to see that the European countries are trying to work closely with Ukrainian authorities to try to uncover all of these underhanded tactics. It is atrocious to see and hear that there is someone that is really trying to do war profiteering and, more importantly, supplying weapons to Russia. This is beyond absurd. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate your time if you made it this far. Trust in Ukrainian armed forces. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.